Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to the show. Welcome back to another Wednesday afternoon and another episode of Action Movie Anatomy. We're here to talk about the kickoff of the most unbelievable decade for a female director, in my opinion, of all time. It's going to be The Hurt Locker. We'll see you guys in just 1 second.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Action Movie Anatomy.
What's up, everybody?
Bow, bow, bow.
How you guys doing? Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show, everybody. It's Action Movie Anatomy here on a Wednesday afternoon, and we're back. We're back to chat about. This is an exciting movie to cover. Like, I feel like we're 2 years later, and when we started the show, we didn't think we'd ever be able to cover a movie like this.
No, we were almost positive. I think originally, if you would have talked about this or anyone would have brought this movie up, I would be like, we would have never covered that on the show. I've said that about Saving Private Ryan. I've said about Lord of the Rings. My, how things change.
Yeah, I mean, it is slow, right? Like, I think early on we had talked a little bit about Saving Private Ryan as a movie that was kind of on the edge for us. Because there's way more action in Saving Private Ryan than there is in this movie.
For sure, and I think there's even more action in Saving Private Ryan than, like, most people remember, because it's not the action that really sticks with you.
Right.
Even though the opening scene is so powerful, it's about the relationships and everything else that goes on.
Right, absolutely. So, yes, we are covering The Hurt Locker, guys. We are here to chat about it. There's so much to say. If you didn't realize it, and most of you probably did, this film is directed by a woman, which is not something that we see a whole lot of in modern-day Hollywood with big, successful films like this.
Yeah.
And I personally believe Kathryn Bigelow is the best female director of all time.
Yeah, and that's I think a lot of people will agree with you on that. I think there's a bunch of other women out there that we will discuss. We're going to talk about the top 5 female directors working in Hollywood. But it's interesting because Kathryn Bigelow, who used to be married to James Cameron, and they were not married at the time.
Yep.
She did not want to take this film.
Yeah.
And James was kind of like, you should really do this. I think this is a really good idea for you.
Yeah.
And then she ends up taking all the awards from him at the Oscars that year for Avatar, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah, it's hilarious. And it's just great. I mean, this is a much better film than Avatar, so deservedly so.
And I love that story, too, because it's one of those things where James Cameron doesn't care. No. Like, a lot of people will be like, he doesn't mind. But in the back of their mind, they're like, God, I wanted that Oscar.
Right, of course.
Cameron really just doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, not at all.
And I love it.
Yeah, he was just like, I'm just going to make 5 more Avatar
movies. Yeah, exactly.
So, guys, it's Action Movie Anatomy. If you want to follow along in the conversation, you can catch up with any one of us. You can find me personally at Ben Bateman Media on Twitter or Instagram. And, of course, we have the podcast on Twitter at AMA Podcast.
You guys can find me at Andrew Ghai on Instagram and Twitter. And, guys, our Action Movie Anatomy fan page on Facebook is growing exponentially. It's growing rapidly. We're getting very close to our 400th members. So
I can't believe, honestly.
We were just celebrating 300.
Yeah.
I know, right?
Yeah, I can't believe it. It's really exciting. Really exciting to see that growing. So if you guys want to go ahead and follow along there, that's a fun thing. And on the couch today, we have the specialist. Marina Verano. Welcome to the show, Marina. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me again. If you want to find me on Instagram or Twitter, it's Marina_Verano, Varano. And like they said, please join the fan page. Get your friends, family, cousins, brothers, sisters. I enjoy chatting with all of you every day, so we got some good stuff going on.
This is the first time you saw this movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked it.
Yeah.
I liked it a lot.
All right, I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, this is a good one. So, guys, we should point out we do cover action movies on this show that adhere to 4 basic rules on the Popcorn Talk Network. Rule number 1, the hero always plays by their own rules. And I think it's safe to say that Jeremy Renner is the hero, and I think it is safe to say that he plays by his own rules.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I think in a very different way, because it's not in a, like, save the day way. It's in a super masochistic way.
Yeah, I think that's, you said it perfectly. He's a total anti-hero.
Yeah, totally. Rule number 2, the hero and the villain are always the smartest people, beings, things, whatever in the room. I guess in the context of this movie, he is the smartest guy in the room. In the context of his life, he will die eventually by a bomb.
Probably.
So the bomb is actually always going to be smarter than him in the long run. There's no way he'll ever, if he just does what he's doing for you know what I mean?
You just can't do it forever.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, I hate to use this example, and please don't take it negatively, but it's like Steve Irwin. It's like, you play with fire enough, sometimes fire is going to bite you back or burn you. And it's like, you saw it with Guy Pearce in the beginning of the movie.
Yep.
Totally.
Rule number 3, the movie is driven by a police, military, or political figure. And I guess we left out mercenary, but yeah, it's definitely military. The whole film's military. Mm-hmm. Is there a woman in this movie at all?
There's just Evangeline Lilly.
Yeah.
But even then, it's such an interesting character.
Yeah, for just a minute. And rule number 4, the movie contains a minimum of 1 explosion. Definitely great
about
explosions
bombs, yeah.
in this movie. So guys, that's pretty much what we do here on the show. We are going to get straight into the show, and the show today will include a conversation of the 5 best female directors working today. We're going to have a conversation, is Jeremy Renner overrated, underrated, or properly rated? And of course, we're going to talk about what would have happened if Tom Cruise had starred in the film.
Most importantly.
Let's just jump to that.
Yeah, let's just get straight into it. But in the meantime, let's watch the trailer for the movie and get straight into the show.
I do not remember this trailer.
It's an okay trailer.
Yeah.
Welcome to Camp Victory.
Oh, Camp Victory. I thought this was Camp Liberty.
Oh no, they changed that about a week ago. Victory sound.
I love him.
Mackie?
All right.
Sambo.
Yeah.
So what do you got?
The car has been parked illegally. The suspension is sagging. There's definitely something heavy in the trunk.
Hey, Marina, would you do me a quick favor?
Interesting.
Would you mind just ducking to the camera and just shutting the door there so we
What's
don't
he
get
doing?
bleeding from that?
I'm gonna die. I wanna die comfortable.
How many bombs have you disarmed?
873.
873. You're a wild man, you know that?
Thank you.
That was so bad. Our first time working together. What do you think?
I think us working together means I talk to you and you talk to me.
You going on a date, Sanborn?
My team leader is inspiring. He's gonna get me killed.
I have an interesting point about the scene we just seen here. I think it's the way you wait till after the trailer talking about it.
That was good.
It's combat, buddy.
What do we have here?
This box is full of stuff that almost killed me.
What about this one? Where's this one from, Will?
It's my wedding ring. Like I said, stuff that almost killed me.
She gets, as her career develops, she gets to be more and more and more of an actual, like, dramatic master. What's really interesting about this movie is there are certain moments that are still reminiscent of
Point Break.
No, like her history is a little bit more of like a throwaway action director. Yeah, like the beats, like Things That Almost Killed Me, stuff like that.
So we can keep going on missions.
The other thing I'm gonna mention in a second, they're like very clearly things that come from sort of bad, not bad, but like predictable 90s action movies. Whereas I think Zero Dark gets much darker, and Detroit is certainly nothing like Point Break.
Yeah, Detroit's just a straight up drama, isn't it?
Yeah, it's super intense.
Roll the dice. And you deal with it.
That's a great shot.
It's
one of the best shots in the
whole
movie.
for sure. Movie totally came out of nowhere, and at the time that this came out, it was like, oh, Kathryn Bigelow, huh? Like,
Yeah.
this is 17 years after Point Break, which like Point Break was an effective action movie at the time, but by no means was like an Oscar movie. It was just like a stupid action movie that people liked a lot. The idea that she was going to direct this intense drama, I think people didn't quite know how to take it.
They didn't know what to expect, I feel like, too.
Yeah, I mean, K-19 The Widowmaker was 2002. It's a good example of like that's the level of movie she had most recently made in the war genre.
I'm like trying to guide my mother into trying to figure out how to watch this episode right now. We've done 110 fucking episodes and she still can't figure it. I love you, Mom, but come on.
Love you, Supak.
Send her the link.
She doesn't matter. I've sent her the link. I've sent her 100 links.
So before we get into Thesis Statement, guys, a Thesis Statement is the part of the show where you have a really strong, bold thought about the film. Something, rooted in hyperbole, the greatest this, the only this, the first. And it should never be, soft. It should always be like a really strong thought you have. I actually previewed mine a little bit, I think, in the intro to the show. But I want to get into something I was just mentioning over the trailer, which is that you see elements of sort of cheeseball action movies show up in this movie.
Yeah. I want to know what your other point, or like,
Yeah.
okay.
Thinking about it, there's a clear, he's going to die guy. Clear. It's the therapist. It's the guy who's counseling Eldritch. As soon as he gets in the car with them, you're positive he's dead.
Yeah, the guy that I'm like positive is Mark Anthony, but it's not.
That's not Mark Anthony?
It's not.
Really?
100%. I know.
That's hilarious.
I like went out of my way to like argue with someone the other day.
He looks identical to Mark Anthony.
I know.
What's his name?
It's not Mark Anthony. It's something like, it's very similar. I mean, he looks very similar. I'll look it up. But yeah, that drove me crazy. It was just like when I
Oh,
thought.
Kristian Camargo.
Yeah, there you go.
Christian Camargo.
Just like how I thought Fairuza Balk was the other girl in Batman Forever. I think I quizzed you on that. It's
and
like
you were wrong.
Drew Barrymore and Fairuza Balk, and it's not.
Didn't we think Mila Kunis was in a movie recently, and it definitely wasn't her?
Yeah.
Sounds about right. We don't know what we're talking about.
So, but yeah, I just think that's interesting, right? Like it's a plot device that is like set up in the way that those, like, he's gonna die guy. It's like a device, and it's effective in the movie, but it's gonna happen. I just think it's so interesting. Like, there's elements in this movie where she hadn't quite transitioned into where she is now as a director,
Right.
And that's gonna lead me into my thesis statement.
I want to hear it.
So my thesis statement is, and I said earlier, I believe Kathryn Bigelow is the greatest female director of all time, but more importantly, The Hurt Locker kicks off the greatest decade by a female director in film history.
Yeah, I heard you say that, and I want to know why you say that.
Well,
why decade? Because since Hurt Locker, what has she produced?
She has
has come up with
3 films: The Hurt Locker, Zero Dark 30, and Detroit.
Zero
right?
Dark 30. I love that.
Amazing movie.
Love that movie.
I have a strong suspicion Detroit's going to get nominated for at least 6 Oscars. It won't win, because I don't think that it's a perfect enough movie to beat out some of the quality stuff we've seen come out this year, but it will get nominated for Best Picture. She will once again get nominated for Best Director, which means that 3 films in a row she's directed will have been nominated for Best Picture, and she will have been nominated for Best Director 3 times in a row. We're going to talk a little bit later about the female directors in question here. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, because of the way the Hollywood system has worked historically, and it's getting better, but historically there haven't been opportunities for female directors to make the kind of impact movies we're talking about.
Yeah, and it is always it's like the Jordan argument, the Kobe argument, the LeBron argument. She is the greatest because she's had the most nominations, and she's the first ever to win.
Yeah,
and win Best Picture as a female director as well.
But even beyond that, I think what's so interesting about this is that The Hurt Locker really marks the rebirth of Kathryn Bigelow as a director.
Totally, because when this movie came out, I didn't know who she was.
The first part of her career is distinctly different.
Yeah.
The most notable 2 movies in the first half of her career are Point Break and Near Dark.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say K-19.
No. Damn it. And then you throw in a bunch of like sort of weird movies like is it not Blue Thunder, Blue something from like 1990 with Jamie Lee Curtis. No, it's a movie from 1990 with Jamie Lee Curtis that's like some sort of drama thriller. But you throw that in, you throw in Strange Days, K-19 The Widowmaker. I think she did a movie called The Weight of Water in 2000. She has like this very weird career where prior to this phase, she would just be considered sort of like the oddity, the female director working in action, which is not something that you see very often. Now it's totally different. Now you can distinctly divide Kathryn Bigelow's career into 2 halves. And the last decade is far and away the most impressive run by a female in the history of film. There's not even anybody really in the same conversation. And we'll get into it later. But there are definitely directors that have done great things within their genre, and you could make arguments that some of those people have really impressive decades. But to me, maybe it's the subject matter that gets the nominations, but nonetheless, it's just the masterwork from those 3 films. And I saw Detroit. I recommend you guys see it. It's very good.
And it feels like for her path is only going like, it's not even like slightly going up. It's just straight up. And you can tell by the movies that she's picking and the subject matter. It's also crazy that like the 2 big movies that kind of put her back on the map are like direct war movies in the Middle East.
Totally.
And they're really dark.
All written by the same dude.
Yeah. All right. So my thesis statement is, it's really interesting because our boy Richard, Eric Jarvie, made this really long post today on our Facebook page. And it really made me think, because my thesis is that the story with Beckham is the most irrelevant part of this movie. It's a nod to bad cliche directing. And I think it's the worst thing in this film. I think it makes it 20 minutes too long. I think it doesn't make any sense to attach to it. I think
I didn't get the relevance either, now that you say that.
Totally. And I think you've got enough going on with Eldridge and Sanborn, and like, right after Eldridge almost dies, you have that moment of Renner going and taking a shower with his clothes on, and it's the first time you kind of see him shaken. And I don't even really know why it is, because I don't think it's because he feels bad about almost getting his partner killed. I don't think that's anything to do with it. I think it was just one of those things like, damn, that was a good game.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like, that was insane. So, but I'm going to try to paraphrase this. He says, I can't narrow this down to a single question, but I'm fascinated about what you think about the DVD selling kid Beckham. What do you think is the importance of him? Do you think he actually died? Was it actually him that was a bomb? Do you think that James is suffering from PTSD? Do you think it's a figment of his imagination? And And I think that's really interesting. I think that if you want to like try to fight for that being a figment of his imagination, like you're definitely giving more credit than credit is due.
I think so too.
But that's not a bad thing. Like if you can hold on to that and really convince yourself that they knew about that, but they didn't want to throw it into the film because they didn't want to have to explain it, then I think that's a really cool idea. I think that's the only way that you can put that in the story and make it help the film. But even then, it doesn't help because you don't ever acknowledge that that's what it is. It's just like, why do I care? Why do I care about this kid? Okay, he's like, it's like a fun little moment of comedy, and you know,
it almost was like a distraction, kind of.
yeah, it's like to pull you away from, but then you're like distracted from what?
Right.
And then you know, so then the kid, and then he digs the really gnarly scene of him digging that bomb out of the kid's stomach.
Yeah.
And then you just see him the next day, and you kind of feel cheated,
Right.
as an audience member. You kind of am like, it's like the Walking Dead effect, where it was like Glenn died 3 times before they killed him. You know what I mean? Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
And like, I don't like that shit
Yeah,
in
right.
movies. I don't like, especially in a movie that's this good, Best Picture, Best Director, like
Yeah.
nominated for Best Actor, like these things. So, I think that my point is, the thesis is that the most irrelevant part of this film, the only way to make this excellent film great or perfect, is to take out that storyline or give it a little more to stand on.
Well, I think, and I want to know, so specifically, what is your thesis?
Specifically, my thesis is that the storyline with the DVD selling kid Beckham is completely irrelevant, and this film suffers because of it. And it would be better without it entirely.
So what I was saying to you the other day when we talked about this was that I think sometimes you see, like, okay, I talk about this a lot, but Sam Mendes is a director who recently I was sort of revisiting his movies and just taking it all in again. American Beauty, Road to Perdition, some of that stuff. When you watch a Sam Mendes movie, every part of it feels very intentional. It's everything from the music to the cinematography, and this is back to his first movie. Like, it feels all like this sort of flowing, perfect thing. When you watch movies from directors who are maybe like getting their feet a little more or like a little newer, you often have that moment where there's something that's supposed to hit a little harder than it does, and it ultimately just feels like kind of a weak part of the story. It's something that you notice in good movies, bad movies. It happens all the time. It's just like some element, like an extra plot line that was thrown in. Even great directors, like the Two-Face storyline in The Dark Knight's a good example of something that's kind of like that, where it's like it doesn't really hit the way it's supposed to. It kind of feels like it's overlong. In Heat, the Waingro story, it's like, fine, it doesn't really necessarily need to be there.
Totally.
The same thing I kind of feel about the Beckham story, which is like, it does take away from the movie. It makes the movie feel a little bit less intentional.
It makes it feel more Hollywood, right?
It
Or
just
like
makes it feel...
It makes it feel like more of a movie?
Not even, like, it doesn't feel like it's a cop-out as much as it's just like, you're just adding one more thing in that when, like, before you could take the helicopter view and really look at the way this was all going to feel, this felt at one time to you like a very important part of the story. But if you could have gotten a little bit of distance from the project, you probably would have realized it just didn't need to be there. It just made it longer than it needed to be. It just added something that didn't need. And it's weird to talk about a movie that won Best Picture that way because, like,
Totally. But that, I mean, that happens.
who are we to really say they made a mistake when the movie won fucking Best Picture? But
Totally.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you. Marina, do you have any profound thoughts on this one?
My thesis, which Richard, yes, good minds think alike. Sorry about my voice, bear with me. But I think this was the best intro to a war movie. The first 7 minutes were just so captivating. And especially with, like, Sanborn, like, the part where the guy's like, "You from California? You from California? This ain't no meet and greet." Like, it was just the perfect amount of comedy. Like, it was very captivating. Because, like, when you're at the movies in the intro scene, like, you're still getting comfortable in your seat, whatever. When I watched this, I was, like, just glued. Like, I was glued in the whole movie was very good. But it was like 7 or 8 minutes that the intro was. I went back and rewatched it. And it was just perfect. You see, like, the little robot thing driving around. You're just like, you don't know what's going on, but then you understand why everything was there for a reason, and then it goes right into it. And I really like that. And a lot of people agreed that it was, because, like, Saving Private Ryan, Dunkirk, obviously they all started out very well. But this one was just, there was something about it that I kept watching it.
It's great, yeah. I mean, I think it's the one you just mentioned, the toughest comparison is SPR.
Because the Normandy scene.
But we've both agreed that I think the beginning of that movie actually suffers because of the bookends on that movie, the unnecessary stuff at the gravesite, which I think actually is a slower intro to the movie than people realize. There's actually like 2 to 3 minutes of that movie that don't immediately grab you, whereas this one I think it actually does a little bit more so right from the first frame. The Rock being the other greatest intro of all time.
Yeah,
I miss you so much.
I really do think they could have just cut both those bookends on SPR. If
Yeah,
you just
I agree.
start it and end. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. My other thesis was that this is the greatest use of top billed guest stars or co-stars or like cameos ever.
Yeah.
Because Guy Pearce, David Morse, and Ralph Fiennes are all more famous than anyone else in this movie at this time.
And they're all like tiny characters.
They're all in it
They
in
all
less
died
than
off.
10 minutes,
Yeah.
and there's such powerful moments.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we'll get into it because we're going to talk about them. So let's move on.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, we're going to move on to the next portion of the show, and that is going to be fist pump moment. This is that moment in the movie something happens. You look around, you're like, are you seeing this right now? This is so good. I can't believe I get to watch the rest of this movie. I love it.
Like something happens in the movie, and you just get like that overwhelming like joy, like that euphoria in you.
Yeah.
And I know exactly when it is for both of us in this.
And you're watching, you just like, yes, this is great. I think it's hard for it not to be the moment we're both thinking of because it's such a bizarre and like... I think it's actually one of the most effective moments dramatically in the whole movie.
I think it's the most effective moment in the whole movie, period.
It's such a weird moment. Like thinking about her deciding to shoot that and like what it
And
would
like
sort of mean to
picking
the story.
him to do it.
Yeah.
Like, and then,
So you can go ahead and lead with it.
yeah, so the scene we're talking about is it's right after that really intense defusal where Renner takes off his headphones, he
knew
takes
it.
off all of his gear, and it's like, what is this guy doing? You know,
Yeah.
Mackey's pissed off, and so David Morse comes up to him, and he's like,
He says to Eldritch first.
yeah,
You, James? You the guy that defused the bombs?
no, it's him over there, sir.
James, someone looking for you.
Wow, man. Yeah, so he walks up to him, and what is the first thing he says? Is how many? He says
He goes, James, and he's just like, oh shit, because he realizes it's like a general.
command-
Yeah.
Right? And he's like, is you defuse those bombs? And he's like, yes. And he's like, hot shit.
Wild man. How many bombs you defused?
873.
No. He goes, I don't know, sir. He goes, soldier, I ask you a question.
873.
873. God, it's got to be some kind of record. Hot shit. Wild man. What's the best way you go about defusing these bombs?
Yeah. Well, you don't die, sir.
Spoken like a true wild man. Well, you don't die. Like, he is so awesome. He makes Jeremy Renner, it's like the coolest guy that you've ever met. It's like
Yeah.
the coolest man in the world being like, this guy's cooler than me.
Right.
I almost like don't even because like the moment you see him right before that, Eldritch is like working on this guy and he's like, we could still take him back to base. He's like, he's not gonna make it, and he's like, 20 minutes to
Yeah.
base, or we could. He's like,
He's not going to make it.
He's like kind of just like he seems like your classic war-hardened piece of shit.
Yep.
Like commander, and like it's such a cool choice to make David Morse play that guy, and just he has so little screen time, but it's such a great moment in the movie. It defines what the movie's about. It's like
Yeah, it's the hero. It's like the hero qualifier that we always talk about in films, even though it's done in such a different way.
Yeah.
It's like exactly that. It's like this guy's telling you how awesome this guy is. This guy's been around for a long time.
Well, yet again, guys, another thing that Kathryn Bigelow is obsessed with, and this goes back to her days directing Point Break. They describe the characters in Point Break as adrenaline junkies. That's what that movie's about. And yes, it's a cheeseball action
Yeah.
movie, but he's an adrenaline junkie
And
in
that's
the war.
exactly what this movie's about.
That's what this movie's
Yeah.
about. The whole entire movie is this like it's like this collage of the most like glaring machismo characters you've ever met.
Yep.
That's all he is. He's like they're all just like these dudes trying to assert who's got the bigger dick.
And then
But
it's
he's the most willing to die, so he's always gonna have the biggest
always,
dick.
yeah. And then it's so crazy when he goes back, and that's I think actually, you know what, I take that back. I think that maybe the greatest dramatic moment is actually them in the store
When he's looking at the cereal.
Yeah, because there's something that just feels. Look, I've never been to war. I've never been to the services, and I appreciate everyone that has spent their time and done that for our country. So I have no idea what it feels like to be in battle or in combat or in even just the camp.
Right.
But for some reason, you're sitting there and you're watching this movie, and you're like, yeah, I feel comfortable here.
Right.
Like, for some reason, because Renner is so comfortable, you feel comfortable as an audience member.
Right.
You're like, I could probably go to war. I'd be all right.
Sure, because he
Just
doesn't
the way
die.
he carries
Just the way he
himself.
carries himself.
Yeah.
And then you go to the store and the way it's shot with the lighting and the silence and then the way he even talks to his wife, you think it's the first time they've met.
Right.
Really quickly. You think maybe he's picking her up.
Right.
But then you realize it's no, they're picking up cereal for their kid. It's just the discomfort of that scene is incredible.
Which ultimately I think is the reason this movie won Best Picture. It's a lot of the scenes we're talking about. You know, you think about war as a general topic for film, and you think about the movies that have done well. and I'm going all the way back to like 1929, All Quiet on the Western Front. Like, you know, like that's some old shit. Like we're talking like pre-World War II movie making. And you go back as far as you can go, war will always be a topic that's interesting to Americans to watch because we've been in a bunch of them. And a lot of people have actually been in the service, but the emotional strain that goes up on someone when they have to go to war is like not something most of us have experienced. So getting to watch it in a film, it's immersing yourself in like the realest kind of drama. It's not like being a contract killer where you're going to meet one in your life. It's like you probably know a couple people who have been in the service.
Right, and I think most people out there, I'd say 95% of the audience will identify with Eldridge and Sanborn.
Yep.
And then the other 5%, like everyone secretly like wants to be Renner.
Yeah.
But we all identify with the other two. What are you doing taking your headset off? What are you doing? You don't know who to shoot. You don't know what to do. You could have shot that guy. He would be alive, but you didn't, and now Guy Pearce is dead. Like things like that. And so, what's so interesting about this film is you get to watch a war through eyes of someone you never get to see. You never get to see that point of view before.
Right.
Every other time you watch war, it's through what we all expect. It's like terror, not knowing what you're doing, wanting to go home.
Right.
So I think that's what's so interesting about this film that makes it not really feel like a war movie.
Right.
It makes it feel like more of like I don't know. Like a character-driven, like action drama.
Yeah, totally. And what I was gonna say is like when we think about this movie winning Best Picture, the approach to showing war in film changes generationally. And these movies, some age really well and others don't, because ultimately the further away you get from that war, the less relatable the subject matter is to someone. Which is why I think as a decade passes, it's sort of more acceptable to go make another one of these. And occasionally you'll get something like Dunkirk, where it's retreading an old story from a long time ago. But, you know, I mean, if you think about, like, over the years, films that have done really well, All Quiet's an example. You know, Patton in 1970 wins Best Picture. You have Platoon wins Best Picture in 86. You jump all the way into the 90s. It's like Saving Private Ryan in 98 should have won. Everybody knows that, but it didn't. The English Patient won in 1996. Like, that's a war film.
Yeah, I mean, we're obsessed with war.
Yeah.
We always will be.
I think, like, to just bounce off what you were saying, it's almost like you resonate with the characters while the war is going on around them rather than focusing on the war. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like character driven, like you said. You deal with them while the war is going on. Yeah, obviously that doesn't take away from it. It's a war movie and you're not going to forget that. But whereas in other war movies, it's like that's the main focus and the characters kind of add to it. It was like the reverse effect in this movie.
Yeah, I think Saving Private Ryan has the perfect balance of the two of that. And then Dunkirk and Hurt Locker on the two opposite ends.
Right.
Well, I think also like the details that you choose to show when you tell one of these movies that's outside of combat are the ones that ultimately are the most memorable to people. So the supermarket is, I think, the sort of moment in this movie that gets it the win, because that's the unique point of view from this war that she decided to show and exhibit. It's not something you see as often. I mean, American Sniper was like the most profitable January release of all time. Like people in our country love war movies.
Yeah, and this movie didn't make any money. We're gonna get into that soon.
Yeah.
So moving on into star profiles, super interesting because these guys were basically nobodies when this movie came out.
I would call them elevated nobodies.
Elevated nobodies. Like I'd seen Renner before, and I was a fan of his. I don't remember what I saw him in that made me a fan of his, but I remember seeing Hurt Locker, the trailer, and I was like, oh. He's in it.
I didn't
Like I
recognize
saw him before.
Yeah, I liked. Yeah, so Jeremy Renner had done 28 Weeks Later in 2007, Take in 2007, and then The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford in 2007, and that he has a pretty substantial role in.
Yeah, The Assassination of Jesse James was the recent movie when this movie came out, and all the critics were talking about it, that people were referencing as like most recently he had a standout role in kind of a thing, but it wasn't like. You know, Brad Pitt stars in that movie, and Casey Affleck is the other star in that movie. Renner's a small character; he's a cowboy in that movie. He's not like impressive in the way that he's impressive. Like, if you look at Renner's career, what it basically breaks down to is he got his dramatic break, his real standout dramatic break at age 30. That's when he did his movie that people saw, and that was called Dahmer. And it's the Jeffrey Dahmer story.
Dahmer.
But
that's where I saw him.
But it's the same kind of thing as Tom Hardy and Bronson, where it's like no one really saw that movie. People went and watched it later, but nobody saw that movie. Kathryn Bigelow, on the other hand, did see that movie, which was why she cast Jeremy Renner in this movie.
Yeah.
But around the same time, in 2002, family friends of mine, Mark Stratton and Lois, what is Lois's last name? I haven't seen him in a little while. They directed a movie called Monkey Love. And it stars Jeremy Renner. He's one of the 4 leads in this movie. And I went to a Seattle screening of this movie in 2002, And at the time, he was basically a nobody, like actually a nobody.
Yeah.
He had been on television a few times, but I know that between those movies and this movie, he was buying homes, flipping houses, living in them, and remodeling the houses.
Yeah, and I've seen that in his commercial.
Yeah.
For whatever liquor that is. It's like he likes to remodel houses, he's got a band, and he's an actor. Yeah.
He's like, he was the most like laid back, I'll just keep doing the work and being in stuff, but like he wasn't a millionaire because he hadn't been in anything yet.
Yeah.
And this movie came along, and she cast him in this movie because she had seen the three of them specifically. I think she listed. She had seen the guy who plays Eldritch in Jarhead.
Yep.
She had seen Anthony Mackie in.
It's like a.
What am I forgetting?
It wasn't We Are Marshall. It was
I don't have it in front of me, but she had seen
I
Anthony
had it
Mackie
too.
in something else. I might have even written it down in here. And then finally, she had seen
Renner and Dahmer.
Yeah, and that's where the casting for this film came from. So definitely, Jeremy Renner's career after this film completely took off, and we're going to talk about, is Jeremy Renner properly rated in our minds in just a minute. But let's chat Anthony Mackie a little bit first.
Hi, Mom. She finally got in.
Hi, Supak.
All right, so hopping over to Anthony Mackie, who is Anthony Mackie more famous than Jeremy Renner now, or is Jeremy Renner more famous than Anthony Mackie?
Renner's more famous than Mackie.
You would think so, right? Even though Mackie kind of seems to have more of a public draw to him.
No, I mean Renner's in the Mission Impossible franchise. He's in the Marvel franchise.
Totally. But like, how many people talk about Jeremy Renner? Whereas like Anthony Mackie, I feel like is like a cult,
presence?
you know what I mean?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I guess you're right. Hawkeye, in the context of that franchise, is a smaller character.
And even Falcon is smaller, but like,
He was,
yeah,
like,
it's just
in-
interesting.
Yeah, I would put Renner ahead of him slightly, but I don't think they're too
It can
far
go
off.
either way, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So Anthony Mackie's three most recent hits back in 2006 and 2007 were Crossover in 2006, We Are Marshall in 2006, and Ascension Day. I've seen We Are Marshall.
Me too. I haven't seen the other two.
I haven't seen the other two. He was just up and coming. He's super young at this point.
I love We Are Marshall.
Yeah, sweet. He had his breakout role in 8 Mile in 2002,
Yeah.
and he had a small
Was that
role.
it? No, that wasn't it. What was the movie that we're trying to think of?
No, it's $1 Million Baby in 2004.
That was it. That
Yeah.
Anthony Mackie was in that she saw him in?
I don't know if she saw him in that, but I mean,
No,
those are,
I'm talking about the thing that you and I were just talking about.
That
where
she saw him in?
Yeah, I'm going to figure it out.
that I'm not sure. But definitely the two big credits were, he plays what the hell is the character's name that Eminem has to beat at the shelter at the end. He's like the main villain.
The
He's-
rapper.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
can't think of the character's name.
Oh my God.
What?
Lotto.
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 Lotto? No, I feel like he has like a.
I don't know.
What-
Marissa sounded pretty
What's his
confident.
rap name though?
It's
I'll think of it.
It's something we'd know.
Lotto.
Yeah. I know
Yeah,
what you're
because
saying.
I interviewed
Half
Anthony
Nelson. That's
Yeah,
what
that's
it
the
was.
one.
Half Nelson with Gosling.
I interviewed Anthony Mackie like 3 weeks ago, and I made reference to the character's name. I just can't think what the character's name is, and it's. He
All right,
has
so
some.
while you think about that,
All right.
I'm going to
Ben's
intro
gonna
this.
get stressed out.
Yeah, I'm gonna intro this conversation.
Papa Doc.
Papa Doc.
Oh, there we go.
Doc.
Yeah.
He loved that you called him that.
Yeah.
I bet.
I told him, I was like, my dad and I saw 8 Mile in 2002 at the Neptune Theater in Seattle. I can't wait to tell him the story.
Doc. So, guys, this was brought up online, and I love that the fans are talking about this. Over under properly rated for Jeremy Renner.
It's an interesting one.
It's a very interesting conversation because he's a guy that isn't really ever in the limelight solely.
Yep.
He was in this film, but since then he hasn't really been. Jeremy Renner's interesting. I'm going to hop in first because I love Jeremy Renner. I have a huge man crush on Jeremy Renner. I think he's properly rated, though. And the reason that I say this is because I don't know if he has the movie star charisma that we talk about. Like, I definitely think he does because he's so good at Mission Impossible and he's so good in this. But, like, I'm not dying to watch Jeremy Renner as the lead in a movie. Whereas, now I've heard Wind River's fantastic.
I can't wait to see it.
And I can't wait to watch it. But that being said, is that Jeremy Renner does get opportunities to still show us in Wind River to where Ben and I are like dying to watch it.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping it's going to be great. And I'm hoping that he keeps doing this. So my point is that he's doing all the things that I want him to be doing.
Right.
He's making good indie films. He's in the Marvel movies, but he's not letting it take over his career. He's not a douchebag. He picks great films that that he can do when he has time that aren't like massive blockbusters. And like, look, The Town, he was the best part in The Town, and he's the best part in this movie. Like, I just love the guy.
I think he's underrated.
I totally get it.
I think he's underrated, and the reason I say that is because here's what I realized. I was gonna call him properly rated because in my mind I was gonna be like, okay, you know, he had the thing happen to him where he starred in the big movie, the big Oscar movie.
He's gotten one Oscar nod, right?
He
Or did he get one for? He didn't get one for Dahmer.
He definitely got one for The Town. That's where he got the support.
And he got one for this, didn't he?
I thought he got one for this. I think he has
so
two
he's got
noms
two.
in his back-to-back years. So what I think is interesting about Jeremy Renner is he comes along too. So he comes along and he has the big Oscar moment, right, where he's in this movie and everybody's like, oh, this Jeremy Renner guy came out of nowhere, right? So the next few years of his career in my mind were like, that's where he really made his money, right? That was where I first thought. I was like, he's got the Town role, which is like, you know, built for this guy because it's the year after, right? It's perfect for him, right? And then I figure, okay, he shows up in a couple other things. He's in the next Mission Impossible movie. That's another classic career step. Cruise is like, oh, I'll take the leading man Oscar out to be kind of my sidekick in this movie. And then I was like, wait a minute, he starred in Arrival last year. And that was like one of the best movies of the year. And then I was like, and I guess he's been in the Marvel franchise this whole time. And I was like, oh yeah, and he has that role in American Hustle too. That was nominated for Best Picture. And I was like, Jesus, this guy's been working and just like...
He's phenomenal.
Great movie after great movie after great movie. I think he's underrated. I think people don't realize that Jeremy Renner quietly has had one of the most impressive careers in the last decade of any lead actor who's not really a lead actor.
Absolutely. Like, I would kill for that career.
Everyone in Boston says he made The Town,
Yeah.
which I think
absolutely
is
he did.
100%.
He's
Being
the-
from Boston and seeing that movie all the time, it's true.
Blake Lively's accent made that movie.
Yeah, exactly. Richard Jarvey. Whose car are we taking? Yeah. So good. So Marina, do you have any thoughts on that, or how do you feel? Where do you put Jeremy Renner at?
I don't know. I get what you're saying by like he really is never given the limelight, but then again, like when you say Jeremy Renner, it's not like who, like you do know who he is.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know. I feel like he's a little underrated, but then again, he's not overrated. So I think it's like it's in between under and proper. I can see both where you're both coming from.
I see that. I totally forgot he was in Arrival.
Right, me too. And so I was looking at it this morning. I was like, oh, this guy's like killing it. So here's the real question. The phrase
on paper, he's.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So the phrase A-list we use
movie
sometimes.
Is so good.
Arrival. Yes, so good. We use the phrase A-list to refer to people like George Clooney and like the sort of like the top of the top of the top. These icons. These
and we're
people.
Not talking just about the movies they're in. It's about a presence they have socially as well.
It's about a level.
Yeah.
So I used to argue with, I mean, when we started this show, this is how crazy this is. When we started this show, you used to tell me that you thought Ryan Gosling was on the fringe. You were like, I think he's, quietly A-list.
Ryan Gosling.
And he's so clearly
ago.
A-list now.
Yeah.
But like, that's kind of the thing where you're the guy who's headlining Best Picture nominee. You're like, and you're the guy. Like you can lead Blade Runner 2049 next to Harrison Ford. That's the guy you are.
Yeah, because a couple years ago when we talked about Gosling, it was like the movies that we were talking about were like Half Nelson and Blue Valentine.
He was like, baby. He had been in some big stuff. So the question is, on paper, Marina, as you said, Jeremy Renner's clearly A-list. In the context of like, if you could pick 20 guys and girls in Hollywood, if you could pick like the top 20, he's definitely not top 20.
Anywhere near it.
He's probably not even top 50.
Which is why I think Anthony Mackie he could even be in there just because he's just younger and he's got a bigger presence.
I'd call them both top 100, and I'll bet you they're both like
the 60s.
Like right outside the top 50.
Yeah, totally.
And they're like next to each other on the list.
100%.
It's like Terrell Pryor and Antonio and Martavis Bryant in this year's fantasy drafts.
Yeah, we'll see about that. Yeah. We don't talk football in here, Ben.
You're gonna keep Isaiah Crowell. I know it.
Oh, of course I'm for Isaiah Crowell. He's insane.
For $11. Anyway, guys.
Yeah. Fantasy football. Just to answer a quick question, we will be playing Deep Cuts on the 22nd in the Schmoedown.
Yes.
We're coming for you.
Yes, we will.
So let's get into production development, guys. We've talked a good amount about Kathryn Bigelow, but there's a few things here that I wanted to mention from the trivia that we thought were super interesting. We already mentioned the James Cameron part, but originally they were going to cast Colin Farrell, Willem Dafoe, and Charlize Theron.
Which is, you know what the funniest part about that is, by today's standards, Charlize Theron's clearly the most famous of those three.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Charlize Theron's clearly the most famous out of everyone we've talked about today.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jeremy.
She is a good example of somebody who's legitimately top 20 A-list.
Oh, absolutely.
For
Like
sure.
the woman walks in any room, anywhere, and everyone goes, holy shit, that's Charlize Theron.
She's definitely for women.
She's
Top
I think
10,
she's
top 5.
She's
for
like,
women. I think she's number one.
I think she's number one right now. Like used to be Jolie, used to be Kidman, used to be like, you know what I mean? Like it's changed.
It's her moment right now.
It might be Gals in 10 years. We'll see.
Gal's probably not far behind just because
she's
of the
not
massive
just because
success.
of Wonder Woman, but I'm saying Charlize has put in the time.
Totally.
So this is really interesting that I saw. Kathryn Bigelow claims that no scene filmed was left out of the final cut. That's like a Nolan move right there. But even Nolan has scenes he cuts.
Well, so you heard the thing about the sheer number of cameras used to film this movie.
Yeah.
So she has an approach of filmmaking called 360 filming, where you have cameras from all sides. You don't know which one you're playing to. And they were telling me about this a little bit at the Detroit junket. Like, just like that sort of, she puts you right in the thick of it. And the reason she's so good at making war films is because that's the feeling you have in a war environment, is that you don't feel like you have a safe side necessarily if you're in combat. You're kind of being assaulted from all sides at all times.
Right.
And that's kind of the approach. That's why she uses so many cameras. And so there's a lot of shaky cam, very like, her films have a feeling in some ways of almost like it's like a documentary.
Yeah, and I like that the shaky cam, there's a way to do it. Watch this movie. You know what I mean? Like, there's a way to do it without making you nauseous or distract you from the film.
Totally. So yeah, let's talk a little about the people involved in this film. So let's start with Mark Boal. This is pretty interesting. I asked you this morning, have you seen In the Valley of Allah?
And I told you, I think I'd seen it once, and it was when I was working at Blockbuster.
Yeah.
But I don't remember anything about it.
So I never saw this movie.
That's Charlize and TLJ, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's Tommy Lee Jones, shorthand. It's an industry thing. I'm gonna go home and watch In the Valley of Allah tonight, I think.
Is it supposed to be good?
Well, yeah, it's supposed to be very good. Tommy Lee Jones was nominated for Best Actor for it. It's written by Mark Boal. It's his first credit, and it's directed by Paul Haggis. It's the follow-up to Crash. Like, that movie completely missed me on every level.
Yeah, I think that's why I watched it, was because of exactly what you said. It was like the hero qualifier. Someone was telling me about it, and I was like, really?
He's like
all of these things?
He's like a military ex-investigator who's trying to investigate the disappearance of his son after Iraq. Like, I was just like reading about it. I was like, this movie sounds awesome.
Right.
So that's Mark Boal. He's a writer who's been published in The Village Voice, Salon, Rolling Stone, Playboy. He's one of these journalists who writes like those Vanity Fair articles that get turned into movies, kind of a thing.
Right.
And he's that guy because, interestingly enough, his first article was adapted and turned into In the Valley of Allah. And then subsequently, he wrote articles in Playboy and Rolling Stone that were adapted into The Hurt Locker
and Zero Dark 30.
And Zero Dark 30. That's who he is. He's the guy that does that, and then his articles, he goes and he either adapts his own article and writes the screenplay.
How does your article from Playboy
turn into Zero Dark 30?
Turn into Zero Dark 30 or The Hurt Locker? I
mean, he spent time in 2004 embedded with a bomb, the bomb squad, and that's where all the information from this film came from.
That's crazy. They always make that joke. It's like, no, I get Playboy for the articles.
Yeah.
I go to Hooters for the wings.
Yeah, right.
You know, like
I wrote an article for Playboy, and it's The Hurt Locker.
Yeah.
What?
Like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy to me.
So that's this guy, and Mark Boal. You know, we always talk about. You said it's like Phil Jackson, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan. Well, is Kathryn Bigelow what made Mark Boal Mark Boal? Or did Mark Boal make Kathryn Bigelow the second half of her career what it is? Because he's written all three of the films I talk about. Hurt Locker, Zero Dark 30, and Detroit. They're all Mark Boal scripts. On the other hand, In the Valley of Allah completely fell flat for most people, and nobody saw that movie, and he wrote that movie. So
maybe it's just like boring subject matter or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I also think it's a poorly named movie.
Yeah, it is a very poorly named movie. That's such a great combination. I think it's a great duo.
Yeah.
It's an awesome duo.
So that's Mark Boal. He also functions as a producer with Kathryn Bigelow on the film. They've done the three together. Their first collaboration was this film, and it's based on his experience in that bomb squad. He actually was sued by a... yeah, you read this.
Yeah.
Yeah, the guy that basically the character of Jeremy Renner is loosely based on sued him for a lot of money and claimed that he coined the term Hurt Locker, and in court they were like, nope, the term Hurt Locker has existed for like 50 years, and also you're making a bunch of outlandish claims, and the guy ended up being instructed to pay $180,000 in lawyer fees, and they threw the whole case out completely.
Well, of course, because the Hurt Locker they were talking about, it originated in the Vietnam War, right?
Yep.
Is that what it was? And it was basically just what it sounds like. It's a place you don't want to be in.
No.
So Bigelow, I talked a little bit about this already, but she originally, in the mid-'80s, she directed the Western vampire film Near Dark, which is a Bill Paxton film. It's actually very good. It's super low budge. It's one of those movies that a lot of people, like movie nerds, love this movie.
Yeah.
I think it's one of her 5 best. Point Break in 1991.
You think it's one. You love it.
It's one of her 5 best.
Okay.
Her top 5 movies are those 2 and these 3.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty impressive top 5, and I think one of the reasons. I tweeted this the other day, but Kathryn Bigelow, in my opinion, is one of the 25 greatest directors of all time. I thought about it pretty, and I'm like, when you guys hear that, that's not like a loose term. Start thinking about the people you would put into that conversation. If you start up at the top and you're going to put the Camerons and the Spielbergs, and you're going to put
Scorsese's
Scorsese's and the Nolans, and if you want to put Coppola
Kubrick's.
and Kubrick, like you really talk about the greatest, the cream of the crop, you're going to knock 15 of those slots off the list before you even start considering people.
Totally.
And then you start to get into people like Paul Thomas Anderson and Danny Boyle and like David Fincher.
Yep.
And I think that her filmography is impactful enough. I wouldn't be surprised if she jumped some of my favorite male directors. Like I wouldn't be surprised if in the grand scheme of ranking, I put her ahead of PT on the all-time list.
Totally. And there's, wow, that's big.
I'm not saying it, but I'm just thinking like that wouldn't surprise me really.
Well, there's the thing about, I'm so curious. Like, I wish this was like a festival or something where it was like 5 directors get this story and they all make the same movie.
Totally.
Because I know, and we're getting into discussion very soon as the top 5 female working directors. I know that Wonder Woman would have not been good if Patty Jenkins didn't direct it.
Right.
You know, it needed a woman's touch.
That's why Atomic Blonde kind of sucked.
Exactly. It's why that's exactly what Atomic Blonde was missing. So you wonder, in Kathryn Bigelow's directing, in the films that she picks, in the subject matter that she directs, it's like, Jesus, that's with a woman's touch. And I'm not just necessarily saying that makes it lighter or softer or anything, but that's with a woman's touch. And these are already like such intense things. You wonder what it would have been like with a man. You wonder if it would have even been watchable. You wonder if it would have been like a Michael Bay film at that point.
Well, so again, just going back to that conversation with Anthony Mackie that I was referencing, one of the questions that I asked him, the question I started with was, do you think that Kathryn Bigelow, as a minority in Hollywood, of basically an Oscar-winning female director, was the perfect person to direct Detroit because of her role as a minority in the industry? And he just looked at me straight up and he just said, I think she was perfect to direct the film because of her talent. I think if you can do it, you can do it. And you would never believe when you meet this woman that this gentle, beautiful woman has the ability to make these kind of movies, but she does. And I trust her every step of the way. And there wasn't even any he didn't think about the question and be like, oh, that's interesting. He was just like, she's that talented.
She's that talented.
Period. That's why she did it.
And I totally, and I'm not trying to say, and I'm not trying to take away from her talent and saying that it's because she's a woman that it made this film better. Like, she's a fucking great director. She can direct anything. It'll be a good film. But I think the fact that she is a woman that is winning Best Picture and Best Director shows that, like, she is one of the greatest 25 of our generation, if not ever.
Yeah.
Right.
I think so too.
So who are the other 5? I guess we should talk about the producers a little more.
Well, yeah, we'll do it real quickly. I mean, but yeah, just to wrap up Kathryn Bigelow, the only other thing we missed is that she's definitely gone through a couple different phases. She was married to James Cameron. She's directed a lot of films, and she seems to be kind of in her prime. I think Detroit's going to do very well.
Definitely.
I'll be interested to see, does she stick with this kind of like this road she's on, or will this be the last collaboration with Mark Bull for a while, and will she kind of go into a different style of filmmaking? The next phase of her career could be very fascinating. She could do something else. She could go ahead and do like, what if she directed a superhero film?
Right.
You know, it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
the producers on this film, Kathryn Bigelow and Mark Bull, are 2 of them. You have Nicholas Chartier and Greg Shapiro. They're both guys that have basically been consistently working in the 2000s through now. Neither of them with crazy pedigree.
Yeah.
Nicholas Chartier, his other big credit is Dallas Buyers Club. But aside from that, lots and lots of production credits, and most of them are those movies that you click on the box and you're like, oh, it was a straight-to-video Ethan Hawke, crime movie, or like,
I feel like that's like the same for Shapiro. I feel like there's like something with his name that like resonates with me, where I've seen it like at the beginning of a movie many times. It might be Harold and Kumar.
Yeah, he's a little more like varied in the genres that he works in, but he produced the original Harold and Kumar. He stuck with Bigelow and Bull, whereas Nicholas Chartier didn't. So he's done all of those ones, the Harold and Kumar movies, and then just a bunch of other random stuff here and there.
Yeah.
They're both like the kind of guys that
Serenity.
if we met them at a party and started having a conversation about movies they had worked on, you and I would both be floored.
You'd be like, holy shit.
We'd be so excited to meet them.
Yeah.
But in the kind of rarefied air we talk about producers on this show, they're both just sort of like, just guys.
Yeah, it was Harold and Kumar. That must be it. So, all right, the top 5 female working directors. We've got a list here. And we're not going to put them in any order because I don't think that's going to do anyone any favors.
So let's start with Bigelow, and let's just call it what it is. Kathryn Bigelow is number 1 for me.
Yeah.
After that, there's a bunch of names here, and I'm going to throw a couple out there. And just sort of see what your opinion is on each of these. It's a popular pick right now, but the first thing I'm going to do is throw out Patty Jenkins' name. And you can tell me if you disagree or agree. Everybody knows Wonder Woman is fantastic. She also directed Monster in 2003. Fantastic movie. That's it. She's never directed another movie.
Totally, which is why...
Lots of TV.
And you and I had a little bit of this conversation this morning when we were on the phone, and I was saying that Patty Jenkins, I definitely think, is going to be one of the best female directors of our generation, maybe of all time. But as of right now, like you said, she's done 2 movies, and one of which is a superhero movie that was perfect, and the other one is Monster, which is a very, very good dark drama. But you got to remember that like 10 years ago, people used to talk about Diablo Cody in that sense, saying that she was the greatest director, the greatest female director. She was like, you know, with Juno, and what was the one that came right afterwards that she did?
Well, you mean she wrote all those movies, though?
Right. I know she didn't direct them, but I'm talking about her as just like being a female front. Like they were saying that she was like the greatest female writer ever. I didn't mean to say director. I'm sorry. But time tells all.
Totally.
And as much as I want to say Patty Jenkins is, it's just too short. Her track record is too short.
I call it this way because I think the subject matter on the 2 films are so distinctly different, and she was very, very picky about what she agreed to direct. She was supposed to direct Thor: The Dark World. She turned it down. The movie ended up being terrible.
Right.
I commend her, and I think that's why I'm saying it's a question. She's on the edge for me, but I think it's impressive. Next up, I'm going to throw out Sofia Coppola's name. Now, Sofia Coppola would have been exactly what you're talking about. It would have been exactly that because of Lost in Translation. I hear you, Marissa. That's on the list. We're getting there. So Sofia Coppola would have been that person, except that The Beguiled, her current film that just was released this year, she won Best Director at Cannes for. So it's a quirky horror film, I think. I haven't watched it yet, but The Beguiled is supposed to be fantastic. Now, Lost in Translation, very good film. And I don't think it's overrated either. I've seen it recently, and I really like Lost in Translation.
And The Virgin Suicides is like a cult classic.
People love The Virgin Suicides, and then throw in Marie Antoinette, which is one of those movies where the set design's amazing. People think it's a little bit underwhelming. And then she had a bit of a downturn. But I do think with The Beguiled, you're going to see Sofia Coppola's name thrown back on that list.
Yeah, and for me, I'm going to have to like pump the brakes and wait until it comes out.
Yeah,
for that.
Next up, we're going to go to Nancy Meyers. So
Which is Marissa's favorite.
Yeah, and I'm gonna throw in Nancy Meyers and Nora Ephron. I'm gonna throw them into the same conversation.
I love both of them very much.
Yeah, they're both famous for doing like sort of dramatically driven rom-coms. Now, Nora Ephron most famously originally wrote When Harry Met Sally.
Yes.
And then she ended up going on to direct You've Got Mail, She's Got Mail.
She's Got Mail. Is it where Tom Hanks gets poison ivy on his ass?
Bigger Boat Movies. Eddie, big shout out to you. You always make that joke. I love it. Nora Ephron. So You've Got Mail, and also
She's Got Mail, Ben. Sleepless in Seattle, Julia and
Julia. Those are like the big Nora Ephron ones.
Yeah.
And those are all like widely regarded as classics.
Michael.
I do love Michael. And did she do Lucky You or
Lucky Numbers?
Lucky Numbers.
And she also did Bewitched.
Yes. So Nora Ephron, and then Nancy Meyers, she's the one that did like It's Complicated,
The Intern,
The Holiday, The Intern. I think there's one other movie.
The Parent Trap.
The Parent Trap.
Parent
Yeah,
Trap.
yeah.
Something's Got to Give.
Something's Got to Give. Those are all the movies. So both of them kind of work in that same space.
What Women Want and Father of the Bride.
And Father of the Bride. Yeah. And I think both of them are great for sort of exactly the reasons I'm talking about. After that, you've got some interesting names we'll throw out here.
Okay, so I want to like deal with this as like politically appropriately as I can.
Yeah.
But the Wachowski twins that are both now female, that started out both as males.
I know what you're getting.
Yeah, and like I'm not trying to take away from anything, but they were men when they directed it. And like and I understand that you're switching, but then so I don't know. It just feels like it's like kind of taking away from female directors.
From what I understand.
But I'm not trying to be narrow-minded.
Totally. Well, this is what I'll say, because on the surface, I hear you and agree with you. In the most politically correct, like, we are not educated in that subject matter as much as I think we could be.
They identify as women now.
And it's the same conversation about Caitlyn Jenner. It's like, despite achievements made before Caitlyn Jenner was Caitlyn Jenner, it is not correct to refer to Caitlyn Jenner as ever having been a man in the same way. And I think for that reason, that's why they're on here, and it's an interesting conversation to have.
Like now this is who they identify as.
Yeah, exactly. They identified as men when The Matrix were released.
But it's hard not to ignore that, yeah.
Yeah, it's obviously a very, very particular and significant...
So to take everything away, let's take out gender identification and everything. Let's just talk about time periods then. They haven't made anything good since the first Matrix.
I was going to put them on here as an honorable mention because I
Yeah.
honestly don't think that their filmography is very impressive if you take away the first Matrix. They're just a bunch of weird sci-fi movies.
Yeah, and they're interesting and unique, but it's not like, oh my god.
Yeah, have you seen Cloud Atlas or Jupiter Ascending?
Yeah, but I was so stoned when I watched both of them. I don't remember anything about any of it.
I was literally just going to say I was so stoned. No. So I think that's interesting. A couple other names that I threw on here that jump out to me. Amy Heckerling is one that I think is really interesting.
I was just gonna Google her because I don't know who that is.
Amy Heckerling directed Fast Times at Ridgemont High and Clueless. So,
Love Clueless.
yeah, they're
Clueless.
two of the most definitive teen comedies ever.
Oh, and Look Who's Talking.
Yeah,
And
those are the big three. And after that, she really didn't do much else. She did Loser.
she did European Vacation.
She did Loser with
I
Jason
could never
Biggs.
be your woman.
Loser.
So she hasn't done much in the last decade. That's very
Roxbury.
notable.
She did Night of the Roxbury?
So Amy
She's number
Heckerling,
one. She's number one.
but she's like a very interesting name to throw in there.
He just 30 seconds ago. I'm gonna Google her. I don't know who she is. She's number one.
She's number one.
Ava DuVernay is another one. She directed Selma. She just did
Mm-hmm.
13th, the documentary. She's attached to something big that I can't think of right now.
I think if you put these women together, it'd be like the best director of all time.
Jane
They're all
Camp-
so different.
Yeah.
Who's Jane Campion?
She did the piano. The second half of her career is
It's pretty rough.
Yeah. And then the last one I wrote down here is Nico Caro, Nikocaro. And unless I'm mistaken, Mimi Later. It's another one. You know what Mimi Later directed?
No.
The Peacemaker.
Yes. Clooney, Kidman in their prime.
Pay it forward.
And Pay It Forward. Yeah. So the last one I wrote down was Nico Caro. So she is attached to direct, I believe, the live-action Mulan film. I think she's
The zookeeper's wife. That's what she's.
the Zookeeper's wife.
Yeah.
I think she did like
McFarlane.
McFarlane USA. Like she's one of these directors who has done a bunch of movies that reportedly were pretty good that I didn't see many of.
I know North
Country. Yeah, that was one that got some Oscar nominations after Charlize won Best Actress for Monster. It was the next movie with Charlize in it, next big one, 'cause I think it's the next year.
Yeah.
Or it's 2005. I'm pretty sure 2005. But so Nico Caro is another name. But if I was going to throw out my big top five here, I think it would probably be Bigelow. It would be, I'm just going to say Patty Jenkins because I have total faith.
I think it's the first four we
Nora
have
Ephron,
there,
Nancy
plus
Meyers.
maybe Coppola.
Yeah. Like I'd say it's like safe to say Coppola. If you wanted to be once again be respectful of what we think is going to happen, I would say Ava DuVernay is probably the other like popular name there. But again, as far as relevant big movies that she's done that a lot of people have seen, there haven't been many.
Run through that list one more time, then I'm going to hop into box office.
Kathryn Bigelow, Nora Ephron, Nancy Meyers, Patty Jenkins, and we'll say Sofia Coppola with an honorable mention to the Wachowski sisters and Ava DuVernay.
Cool.
Got it.
Yeah. Big fans. Big fans. I love that this is like a conversation we're having now, too, and then it's just going to keep getting better and better.
Yep.
So moving into box office and critical, this is like a very, very interesting one to talk about. So this was produced by Summit Entertainment. It only cost $15 million to make. It was shot on location in Jordan, which was really cool. They didn't need any security guards. They talked about how everyone thought they were going to have security guards, but Jordan was like so safe and chill. Cost $15 million to make. It opened June 26th of 2009, and even though it was made in 2007, correct, or released early in this thing is so because it was in the 2010 Oscars. It was made in 2009. It was released in 2008. It says 2007 on IMDb.
Yeah. I'll tell you exactly what happened. 3 films in history have had the thing happen where they were released at the end of a previous year, but in Oscar consideration on wide release the following year.
And that's
so this film was released at the end of 2008. It's officially a 2008 film, but so is Slumdog.
Yes.
And they won in the subsequent Oscar years. The same can be said for Crash and $1 Million Baby, both 2004 films. And lastly, Casablanca was released in 1942, but won the 1943 Oscar.
Right. There you go. Movie Trivia Schmoedown. We're coming for you. It grossed $17 million domestic and an additional $32 worldwide for a grand total of $49 million. Very successful. But what's super interesting was that it was number 27 its opening weekend.
Yeah.
And it only made $145,000, but it was only opened in 4 theaters.
Well, it already closed by the time Oscar consideration was even coming up. In fact, we can throw up this graphic up here I pulled. Marissa, if we can blow that up so we can actually see it. We're both blind. Thank you. It's Marissa Serafini up in the booth. What's going on, Marissa?
Girl.
Hello, gentlemen and Marina.
Hello.
I really enjoyed the fact that you mentioned Nancy Meyers because she's my ultimate favorite.
Oh, of course.
She's amazing. You know what's funny? Richard Curtis. Is that right? Richard
Yeah, Richard Curtis.
the director? He's the guy who did Love Actually, right?
Love that movie.
Let me. Yes.
I always mixed up Love Actually as a Nancy Meyers movie. Forever. I've always thought that
Really?
was a Nancy Meyers movie. And I just the other day when I was looking it up, I think it's Richard Curtis or
I know it's not Nancy Meyers.
no, it's definitely not.
Yeah.
It's a man. I always thought it was yeah. Anyway, here's the list of the lowest grossing domestic Best Picture winners of all time.
Oh, yes.
Top 10.
Yep.
Hurt Locker is the number 1 lowest grossing domestic Best Picture winner in history. In history. It made
crazy.
no money. Next up is last year's winner, Moonlight.
Yeah, because when I pulled the numbers, it was like number 27. I was like, we got to pull the 20, we got to pull the top 30, and I got to see what's ahead of it. But it's crazy. It was only released in 4 theaters week 1 and 9 theaters in week 2.
Yeah.
Which is so yeah, we can keep going down this. You've got
Moonlight.
Moonlight, Birdman, The Last Emperor, and then The Artist. I thought The Artist would be much higher.
Yeah, made no money. Spotlight, The Deer Hunter, Amadeus, Gandhi.
It's just crazy for these movies, like the ones especially in the last few years with Spotlight and this. Whoever their PR team is, whoever it is that's fighting for them to get to the Academy is it's amazing.
I'm very familiar with this list as I've been studying the Oscars list.
Yes,
recently.
I know. I saw that stupid look on your face. I was wondering what it was for.
I was trying to think how many I knew the director for. The one that I'm gonna die if we ever get asked the question of is the director of The Artist. It's like Mikhail Ajivendovicius or something. Some name that I like, just no idea.
I think that was it. I think that was perfect.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on to critical. This movie got a 7.6 on IMDb. It's not in the top 250, which is
Crazy to me.
it is a little surprising, right?
totally.
Well, Premium Rush is. Or no, not Premium Rush, just Rush is.
Rush. Big shout out to Richard Eric Jarvie, whose favorite film, his 42nd favorite film. I brought back my list.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I did number 42.
Which
number 42 for me was Lone Survivor, and Richard called in with his, and Cinderella Man is his 42nd favorite film.
I do love that movie.
So big shout out, guys. Download Anchor.fm, download the app, find my station, Fist Pump Film Club. I'm going to be continuing to count down my 50 favorite films every single Tuesday. And share yours. I'll share them.
All right, so and then we're talking about Rotten Tomato scores here. All critics gave it a 98, top critics gave it a 98, and the audience gave it an 84. Makes sense in a type of movie like this.
Yeah.
A war movie, a drama. Those are the things people complain about, whatever. All right, so moving on to our favorite line. What do you guys got? There's a bunch of really good ones in this movie. There's not anything that blows your mind.
No, I mean, the David Morse lines are
the really good ones.
Yeah, are super sweet. I would say when we did our Fist Pump moments, did we just only stick with the David Morse thing?
We really only did.
Did none of us
And
have a different...
Marina talked about hers, but we didn't talk about anything other.
Oh, interesting. I was just remembering, because like I have my favorite line, but I also have my fist pump. My fist pump that I didn't get to share is the Ralph Fiennes death.
I know, me too.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Because it's the sound he makes.
It's like, it's just such an effective use as it's such like an unceremonious death. He's up on the sniper rifle and he takes the shot, and it's the way his body flies off the wall.
Yeah.
And like, it's just like one of those things where like, I'll bet in war that's actually it would be kind of
exactly
silent.
what happens.
You're like, I just thought it was one of those things where it was like unique. It's not something I've seen a lot in movies. Thought that was awesome. But
that's so funny because I was actually going to use the David Morse lines for my favorite line and talk about that in Fist Pump, and I just totally forgot.
so my favorite line, I thought about this a lot. Yeah.
Is it the way he falls? Is that your favorite part? Because mine's the sound he makes when he gets shot.
For me, it's the way his body flies off the wall. It's like
Yeah.
the impact of a large caliber bullet
Throws
hitting him.
Yeah.
No, I think my favorite line is when they're all drunk and they're talking about their lives back at home, and Jeremy Renner's talking about his wife, and he's like blah blah blah. I think she's still there, so I don't know what it is. And Anthony Mackie's like makes her stupid, and he goes, "Hey, she's not stupid.
Not stupid, man.
She's loyal." I just love that line because it's like it's one of those things where it's what I hear him when he says that. What I hear him saying is like, "Listen, I don't know what my life's about. I don't know why I ended up where I am. I don't know why I ended up with a kid that I don't have time for, but it's not her fault. It's my fault."
Exactly. She's not stupid.
Yeah.
But it's like she looks stupid because I put her in such a shitty situation. You know?
It's a good response and it's a good simple line, and it says a lot about his character.
Very reminiscent of the "you crazy." I'm not crazy. In Dark Knight, when he says that, he like snaps. You're like, Jesus. All right, he's not crazy. Marina, do you have a favorite line?
Yeah, so, well, first, the saddest moment, my awe moment, was when Thompson dies.
Yeah.
When it was like, they're like, he has a phone, he has a phone, he has a phone, he has a phone. And all of a sudden, like, I had a feeling they were going to take out the guy that's just like,
Right.
with the phone, and then you see him hit the button, and you're just
in
like,
the very beginning. Yeah.
you're just like, oh, shit. And the blood like all over
I
the
know,
thing.
and
Yeah, like the
And they
explosion
show the
inside
rocks
mask.
coming up. Like that was just such a
Yeah.
dramatic, great camera work. Like,
It's badass.
Like
yeah.
the impact of what happens inside that
The
suit.
suit,
Yes.
yeah, the way the blood.
oh my
yeah.
god,
Yeah.
And but favorite line, I just loved Anthony Mackie. I thought he was the perfect amount of like funny that this movie needed.
Yeah.
It's like, you making friends again, Sanborn? All day long. Like, just his,
All
like,
day
comments
long,
are like,
yeah.
this ain't, when the guy's like, you from California? You from California? This ain't no effing meet and greet.
Yeah,
He's
this
just,
ain't
like,
no fucking
holding
meet
a
and greet,
gun.
man. Yeah.
And then, this is one, it was too long to write down as it was happening, so I found it online. It's also Sanborn. He goes, you realize every time you suit up, it's life or death, but you realize every time you suit up, every time we go out, it's life or death.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a good line, too.
You know, speaking of that, one other like scene in this film that I think is a little weird, and watching it again, I found myself a little bit like, felt like heavy-handed or something. It's the scene at the end where
With the
Sanborn's
guy?
no, where Sanborn's in the car with him and he's talking about wanting a son. It's like a good scene,
yeah.
and I understand why it's there, and
want
it's
a
supposed to
son,
be
man.
it's supposed to be sort of almost like a weak moment of vulnerability from Sanborn. Like he's supposed to be kind of like showing his like he's scared and he's like sick of it and he wants to go home.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's Mackie's performance or the way it's framed. There's just something about that scene where I was just like, this just feels like a little heavy-handed for me.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't dislike it, but I agree. It didn't feel proper. So for my like awe moment, I love. There's a couple moments. but
Evangeline Lilly's biceps and the wasp shot that went online. Did you guys all see that?
No,
Holy
she's shredded.
jacked.
Cable looks insane
Oh my
too.
God.
I can't wait. I love when Sanborn or when Eldridge is like, he was right here. He's right here.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
like
yeah,
yelling
yeah,
for
yeah.
his name. He's like, he's gone, man. He's gone. He's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
No, he's right here. He's like holding his helmet. It was just like,
Yeah,
Jesus,
totally.
that is gnarly. My favorite line, I think, I have a couple. So the beginning, or my first one that I have is when Anthony Mackie walks in for the first time after Renner and them have worked together. He's like, hey man, I want to talk to you about yesterday. It wasn't cool. And Renner's like, yeah, I know. You'll get it though. And he just lights a cigarette and goes and lays. You're just like,
What?
no, that's not the point. But it's just the way he says it is just like, I mean, what's Mackie gonna say to him?
I know that's
You
another.
know?
It's another line that I really like too. Is later when he's like, no, we're not doing this. He's like, hey, Sanborn, listen, you don't say no to me.
Yeah.
I say no to you.
Exactly.
And it's one of the few times that he asserts himself, and you're just like, this guy's a fucking prick.
He's a prick,
Yeah.
and he's a badass. And then the other ones that I really love, it's at the very end. It's after Will gets shot, and he's like, you know, Will. He's like, fuck you, man. Really, fuck you. Thanks for saving my life. But we need to go out looking for trouble just so you can get your fucking adrenaline rush,
Yeah.
man. And then Sanborn comes up. He's like, hey, man, go ahead, get home. Go take care of yourself, brother. I just love it's like, he's so mean to fucking Renner. And then
Yeah.
just as soon as Sanborn walks up, he's like, hey, buddy, get home. He's like smiling. It just cracks me up every time. I love it.
Yeah, totally. All right, guys, we only have a couple things left on the show today. I believe we did answer one of the AMA questions from Richard. Did we have another one we wanted to share, or we pretty much covered it earlier, you think?
No, the only other AMA question wasn't really a question. It was discussing the over-under proper. So that was
great.
covered
So
in our
we answered
yeah.
both. And then, I did want to make reference to this because it's one of the few times, and I don't want to do the impression because that's not the point, but we used to do a segment on the show a lot called Cage versus Cruise. And the discussion was who would have been better in the lead role, Nick Cage or Tom Cruise. 2 years later, it's
You don't say no to me.
a very, very, very underwhelming conversation in general because Cage is just like, you can't even take him seriously in that conversation anymore.
say no to me. I say no to you.
But I did think about it a little bit that this role, if it had been directed by someone else and it had been made at the same time, that Cruise could have played the Renner role. And if he had done it the way that Cruise is capable of playing like a darker character,
Yeah.
he would have been phenomenal in this role.
You know what? I really like that. And I'm going to piggyback on that with almost like an old school recast.
Yeah.
I think that Jason Bateman, if he got in a little bit better shape,
Yeah.
would crush this role.
Interesting.
Because Jason
I
Bateman,
love Jason Bateman.
For
I think
some
he's great.
reason, over the last like handful of years,
Yeah.
Jason Bateman has asserted himself as one of the best pricks on camera.
Yeah, he's good.
He's so good at it. So imagine him in like military fatigues with his like kind of
He could have
condescending.
been the perfect asshole.
He could be the perfect asshole. He's like,
Yeah.
you don't say no to me, I say no to you, buddy.
Yeah.
Like things like that. It would be
Right.
really sweet. But I love Cruise in that.
I just was thinking like Mission Impossible 3 era Cruise, where it's like he's that
Little hardened.
age, he's that shape, and he's playing it. I'm trying to think if there's like a Cruise role where he has like a little bit more of that tonality. I guess it would be like the Valkyrie era.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
it's like almost his approach to acting was you want more like that late 90s approach like he was doing in Magnolia. That's like more of the Cruise you'd want. But I just think that if they had, it wouldn't have been the same movie. It wouldn't have won Best Picture. People wouldn't have treated it the same way.
No, definitely. And I made that point on our last Samurai episode, I think, that the only reason Tom Cruise hasn't won an Oscar is because he's Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Oh, I wanted to talk about this because I was trying to think of it during our emotional explosion.
Yeah.
What did you guys think about that guy at the very end who's got the hardened case steel vest on, and Renner's like, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I can't get it off."
Oh, why to do that?
No, what do you guys think about that scene? Because I actually love that scene. It feels super Hollywood, but I love it. And I just like, what do you guys think about that? Because it's like a really sad scene. He's like, I have kids, and he's a good man.
I think it's a great scene. I think for a lot of reasons, because I think she's trying to build the suspense and build up that tension more and more and more and more, for you to feel like he's either going to die here and that's the end of the movie, or he's going to somehow save the day. But like ultimately, what ends up happening is like they're trying to show his humanity a little bit.
Yeah, because it's the only time he gets hurt.
And it's like he's trying to save someone, but he fails at it.
Yeah.
And even though he fails at it, he doesn't die. He just keeps going back in. And like that, it's a cool scene. I think it's really good.
I think that the closing of this movie is brilliant.
Yeah,
where it's just like Days in Bravo Company 1.
Yeah.
Which is all over again.
Yep.
Yeah. Is that what else we got?
It's pretty much that. There's only a couple things left to talk about. One of them is the 3 action movie categories. The 3 categories are totally ridiculous, totally legitimate, and ridiculously legitimate.
Totally legit.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, again, we don't.
I feel
really
like you
have to
could
define
maybe
it.
argue for the middle category because he does seem kind of like a superhero, but for me, it's totally legit.
Yeah,
Totally
I think
legit.
it's totally legit. I think that's an easy one. And then last but not least, we have The Pish, which I think this is going to be one of our classic put up a poll and have you guys vote on it weeks.
Yeah, it's been a while, guys. We were really excited to come back and do a movie that you didn't have to go pay to watch this week.
Yeah,
and
we
it was
did a
also
lot this summer.
A classic that Ben and I are such huge fans of. So I think we're gonna try to do maybe something like that again next week.
Yeah, I think we're gonna put up a poll with some of our favorites, movies that we've wanted to talk about on the show and we haven't gotten to talk about, and that's gonna be the thing. So that's a good reminder for you guys. If you're not there, go ahead and follow us on Twitter at AMA Podcast. I think we might even put the poll up on Facebook.
Oh my gosh.
As well, because now there's
Getting
enough
crazy.
people on Facebook that we actually could get good results at both places.
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
maybe we'll average the results together and see if people want to do that. So go ahead and join the Facebook fan page. Follow on Twitter at AMA Podcast. You can follow me personally at Ben Bateman Media.
You can find me at Andrew Ghai on Instagram and Twitter.
And Marina, where can the folks find you?
At Marina_Verano on Instagram and Twitter. And yes, go on the Facebook fan page, do the poll. We want to hear what you want to see, and we want to make it happen for you. So go join.
All right. Cool, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you same time, same place next week. Have a good one.
Bye.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
Views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.